All right, I'm going to start letting people in. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome. We're going to get started in just 1 minute. Going to start right on time so that we have the whole time. There we go, 4 o'clock. Sherlene, could you share your screen again, please? The recording kicked it off.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Give some folks another couple seconds to join, and then we'll get started.
Okay, did that share?
Yep.
The right one?
Yep, you're on the title slide.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Right. All righty. Awesome. So welcome everybody to the Rooted and Ready training, looking at building a farm to school team and program that is sustainable into the future. It's always relevant, but it's really feeling relevant, especially these days. This is our final training of the Put Local on Your Tray, Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids training series in collaboration with the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. It's been an awesome year. We've seen some really wonderful trainings and collaborations and projects. And so this one, hopefully, this training will inspire everybody and give you all some great actionable takeaways, looking, to plan into the summer and for next fall. All right. Sherlene, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so welcome everybody. I am Abby Dubois. I work with Yukon Extension's Put Local on Your Tray program. I am one of the Farm to School technical assistants. So I work with the Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids grant program. I also wear a couple other hats. So I'm also one of the co-chairs for the Connecticut Farm to School Collaborative Steering Committee. And I am also a farm to school coordinator for both East Hartford Public Schools and Coventry and Andover Public Schools. All right, so this meeting, we are going to have some time. There's so much information in this meeting, really great stuff. We've built time into the meeting for some stops, some reflection. Folks will have the opportunity to use the chat to kind of reflect on what Sherlene is sharing. And I just want to say you will get the most out of this training if you participate when the opportunity arises. So when there's a reflection, that's really where we want you to respond into the chat and, put in your response and then go through and check out everyone else's responses. There is the option in chat to respond directly to someone. And so, start some conversations. If you have a question, raise your hand. If you have a comment you want to shout out, raise your hand. Yeah, and hopefully this can be, deeper than Sherlene's going to share so much, but there's, that opportunity in the chat for a little bit more. And without further ado, I'll introduce Sherlene, let her introduce herself, and we'll get into it.
All right, I think I got can you hear me? Awesome, thank you, Abby.
Sure.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love talking about farm to school. My name is Sherlene Rodriguez, and currently I'm a farm to school coach with the Connecticut Farm to School Institute. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about myself. So I started out my journey in agriculture as a food corps service member at Green Village Initiative in Bridgeport. This was around 2019, 2020. And then I spent a couple years running GVI's school garden program. And then after that, I joined the Put Local on Your Tray team as a farm to school specialist, working alongside Abby and Shannon, where we ran a piloted program called the Deep Dive with 8 school districts. And the goal of that was to strengthen their local procurement strategies. And I've done some other cool projects with Put Local on Your Tray, but that one is what the Deep Dive project is what a lot of this is based off of. To date, I've had the pleasure of coaching 11 school districts. Today, as I mentioned, as a Connecticut Farm to School Institute coach, I'm joining with Beeman Middle School in Middletown, helping them build their farm to school program with local flavors. If you've seen me in other ag spaces, it's because I wear a few other hats. For my day job, I'm a program director at CT NOFA, which is the Northeast Organic Farming Association in Connecticut, and a business advisor in training with the Carrot Project. So basically, I spend my time working with schools and farmers and food system advocates who care about making change. And I'm really excited to be here with you today to share some foundational steps. So as you heard Abby already said, there is a lot of information in this slide deck, and it's because my goal was to get down into the nitty gritty about what it means to build a sustainable team. And it is a lot of work. You know, it's much easier to do a project where you can create a checklist and check things off that list, but creating a team is about creating culture, and it is about creating deeper relationships. So you'll learn how to assess your current team structure, identify some gaps, create some clear roles, and how to distribute leadership strategically. And as I mentioned, I'll draw on the success stories and lessons learned from our 8 deep dive districts to illustrate some of these principles in action. Okay, so for our agenda, we're going to start off by framing what the 3 C's are. This is what Farm to School is based off of. We'll take a look at why it's important to build a farm to school team, the foundations for longevity. We'll go into leadership and team dynamics. I really feel that it's important that we talk about this a little bit. And then after we set the foundation, we'll be able to get into some strategies and success stories, which I know is where all the, the practical components come into play. I also, working with Abby, I know there was a survey that went out and there were people who were looking for some more information. So we might have some farmers on the call. So I wanted to provide some strategies to the farmers that are here or producers. And then we could jump into network supports and some funding opportunities that might be available. And then we can wrap up with a reflection and closing. Okay, so I'm sure everybody is familiar, but just to set the tone, the 3 C's is an approach which was created by Vermont Feed back in 2000, and it's taken root across the country as a successful model that connects the efforts between classroom, cafeteria, and community to achieve sustainable farm to school programs. Successful programs are not add-ons. They are really about looking at the infrastructure within the school and the district, like policies, curriculum, and in this case, in this presentation, we're really focusing on job roles. This requires collaboration amongst a multitude of people in the district. It's not really based off of one person. And so in this presentation, I'm really going to drill down into what culture is about, which, as I mentioned, is about people and relationships. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pass it off to Abby, who's going to give us some context about why this training was dreamt of in the first place.
Yeah, thanks, Sherlene. So when we were kind of thinking about all of the trainings that we were going to offer the grantees and our extended partnerships this year, one thing that we always feel like people are asking for advice about or looking for more information for is, how to build a team. And one of the big barriers we also hear about in farm to school programming is that it just feels like more work. It doesn't feel like, it's not everyone's number one job to do farm to school. And so, people are looking for assistance and looking for support. And so it's just kind of the phrase is, wouldn't it be nice if you weren't doing this work alone? And if you feel like you're alone, you do not have to be. And I'm sure that folks on this call that have been able to, create partnerships and teamwork would say that they can't, they would never imagine going back. And when we were looking at the grantees and the folks that may come to this call, we noticed that a lot of folks had applied as individuals. So, just looking to get their project set for their individual classroom, school. And we want to expand that. We want to teach all of you that you do not have to do it alone. And hopefully this training will give you kind of that checklist and those really concrete actionable steps that you can take to build your team and expand your farm to school programming so that it is sustainable and it does have longevity in your district and in your community.
That's right. Yes. And so, as Abby is mentioning, longevity and sustainability is not a one-person show, and we'll jump into how to create spaces for other people to join you in that work. It's really where the magic lies, to be honest. And, it's essential, as I mentioned, Farm to School is not just a project. It's not like an initiative that you do. It starts off that way, absolutely. But it really is about entrenching Farm to School into the values of the culture at the school or the district. Okay, let me see. Okay, so we're going to jump into some foundational stuff. Okay. So, farm to school programs are most successful and long lasting when teams take time to build two things: commitment and capacity. And based on my experience, in order to build commitment and capacity, there are four essential elements that need to be considered. One is building a vision statement. A vision statement is like your North Star. It's a declaration of your commitment and the values for Farm to School. So if you're working on your own, this could start off with you. Why are you passionate about Farm to School? Why is it that you think it's so important for your students, for your school community? Why? How do you communicate your vision with the rest of this, with the rest of your community? And then I want you to say it loud and proud. Uh, the next step is, once you start getting people on board, I want you to keep in mind that vision statements should be then done more collaboratively, right? You want other people to be part of the work. You want to also have that conversation as to why it's important to them. And everybody brings a different perspective about what they value in the work. I mentioned people. Having committed people in the right work can really take your initiative or project and transform it into a movement that shifts the culture of the school. So it's okay to start off with 1 to 2 people, but ideally you want to expand a group beyond that. So more like 7 to 10 people. And I'll show you what that looks like as we move along. The third is an action plan. Having an action plan turns big ideas into smaller, more achievable steps to ensure success. And without an action plan, farm to school initiatives pretty much stay at that stage. They often are chasing opportunities. It's not something that's sustainable. So oftentimes it stays with one person, history is lost, and I know I've experienced this many times where, there's really no infrastructure, so work starts all over again. And it'd be really nice to have something to build off of. So an action plan can get you there. Funding. Can't do this work without sustainable funding. And ultimately, as I mentioned, because this is part of the idea is that this is part of the school culture, it's integrated into the operating budget. However, I know that's not where any of us are. So there are incentives and grants that can get you started to build the case for why this is the way we should be doing things moving forward. Okay, so here's our first question for you all. So I encourage you to use the chat. Has anyone here successfully created a vision statement for their farm to school program? And if you have, how has it helped your work? So we'll take about 30 seconds to allow people to put their thoughts in the chat. Thank you, Janet. I see. Thank you for being honest. It's okay. We're going to walk into how do we go about doing this process, okay? And I've done this with all the districts I've worked with. So, all right, we're gonna move on. I can get this working. Okay. So vision statements matter, and you'll see throughout the presentation where I'll keep linking back to a vision statement. It matters because it paints a picture of what you're aiming for with your farm to school initiative or program within your district. A clear vision connects your program to the district's educational and nutritional philosophy, making sure that your work is more integrated and impactful. Um, in order for farm to school to take root, its value must be experienced by a diversity of people in the school and communicated to the extended school community. And this allows for everyone to really understand what the impact is going to be. And if it's done well, it will inspire and will also, when you're getting into action planning, help you figure out what work matters and what work, you know, I'm definitely a fan of, working harder, working smarter, not harder. And vision statements can help you do that. So how do you go about do this? So every district that I've worked with, they have some kind of either mission or vision statement or a list of values that's at the district level. And this is basically telling everybody what the district envisions for their students, how their students will be successful. So when you're creating your own vision, right, for farm to school, the idea is to merge them or see where there's alignment with the district's vision. And at least most of the schools have some kind of version of vision of a graduate. And I have found that by examining the vision of a graduate or the district's value statement or even their mission and priorities, you can kind of see how farm to school aligns with that. So the way I've done this with the districts, one, I ask them personally, I ask everybody on the team personally, what do you value most about food, education, and your community? And we basically jot down some values. And then we look at the mission, vision, or priorities of the district, and we see where there's some alignment. And then at some point, we create a vision statement, and we're looking to see, okay, how, what are these values trying to tell us? Why do they benefit our students and our families and our community members? So I am sorry, let me here we go. So there are lots of examples, and I'm sure Abby or Shannon can share other examples. This is one from Coventry Public School. They were one of our 8 districts. Their values: empowering learners, diversity and equity, belonging, building capacity and partnerships. And it looks like a lot, but it's really 2 sentences for their value statement. In our district, we support farm to school initiatives to empower students to develop healthy eating habits, understand the value of farming, support our farmers, and become stewards of their community and environment. We believe our commitment, so again, that word, right? We're talking about commitment and capacity. We believe our commitment to serving local, regional, and farm fresh products support students to reach their highest academic potential and become contributing members of society. So you could see how something like this could really, you could use it to communicate why farm to school is important to anyone in your district, from the superintendent even to your legislators, which I know a lot of folks have done. So, okay. I think I went backwards. Oh no, I'm sorry. We are here again. So we wanted to take another 30 seconds to look if anyone has answered this question before we move on from vision statements. Abby, anything good come through the chat?
Yeah, so after Janet, she had said that they have not created a vision statement, and Janet's coming from an early care education center. Becky, who's one of our regional coordinators, said that she hasn't made a vision statement, but she's worked with districts that have, and she sees the
Mm-hmm.
importance of it. So as an outsider to the district, she's noticing the importance. She looks forward to learning more so that she can help guide. And then Mike from Weston, he's looking for their value statement to make their district kind of the model of sustainable action in schools in Connecticut. Maybe that's the start of his value statement.
Awesome. That's a great goal, Mike. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so if there's any questions that come along the way, as I mentioned, you'll see how vision statements help throughout the rest of the process, but feel free to share more in the chat. And thanks to those who shared already. Okay, so we're going to move on to a couple other things. So action planning for success. So action plans are really important, but I wanted to share this really cool wheel, again from Vermont Feed. This is in their Farm to School Planning Toolkit. And I find this really fascinating because if you see in the wheel, and I'm going to highlight them for you, build your team is number one. Create shared values, which is something I just talked about. Setting some goals and spreading the word are everything that you do first before you dig in. So just notice that digging in is not the first action we're jumping into. And why is that? It's because we are building capacity and buy-in first at the team level or recruiting team members to join us. And we're thinking of new ways of doing things. Okay, so again, build your team. And we're going to go into this. I just talked about shared values, setting some goals, and spreading the word. I know a lot of people, it's very easy, to jump into some sort of action first. But if we want for longevity, we want to focus on the team aspects first. Okay. So I thought a lot about this when I was working with Abby on, how do I present, what a good team looks like. And I couldn't shake the fact that the way in a school, right? Everyone has their fixed roles. Everybody knows exactly what they're doing. A teacher is not going to be a principal. Principal is not going to be the food service director. Everybody has their lane that they're in. However, when it comes to the school culture and do something farm to school base, we've got to move a little bit away from, those established roles just a tiny bit. You want to use those expertise, but we want to start thinking about creating a functional team. So what does a functional team look like? So first, it starts off with a champion. And then later it starts by adding a bunch of other people. As I mentioned, 1 to 2 is great to start off with, but we really want to work our way up to 7+ people. And so when you look at building up team, we want to think about the functional folks first. We want to think about the decision makers. An example of the decision maker is going to be your directors, your administrative, both at the school and at the district level. You want to have your planners and your recruiters. So a planner or a recruiter could be teachers, the farm to school coordinator, the food service manager. Those are the folks that are, for instance, at Beeman Middle School, our nutrition manager, she is an amazing planner, and that's the power that she brings to the team. The other piece, actually, I'm going to pass it off to Abby, who's going to talk a little bit more about hands-on and hands-off.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of teams that we meet with and that are like ready to take it to the next level, we are talking to those first two, the decision makers, the planners, and the recruiters. And like Sherlene said, you need those people to like get the momentum going. But then when we're looking at how to expand it into the, more of the 3 C's, you got to kind of look at the light lift and maybe some more heavy lift, because not everyone can, come to every single meeting and every single taste test and every single garden event. And the folks that are able to come to those things and support, I'd call those like the hands-on, boots on the ground people. So teachers that are incorporating farm to school or ag literacy or sustainability into their classrooms, that's hands-on and that's boots on the ground. Staff and students and parents, community members that are really engaged, and even school custodians, they would all be boots on the ground people doing the work, maybe collecting data and just getting it into the hands of the students. And then this last section, the hands off and the light support folks. So this is really for anyone that's interested in farm to school, but maybe is hesitant about jumping in, or they don't have the time or the bandwidth, or even maybe the ability to be there at all of these events. And a great thing that you can ask these folks to do is be your cheerleaders. And so a light lift action might be if you have social media for your farm to school or for your garden or your food service department. That light lift might be just asking someone to follow your social media. And then maybe they always like your posts. Maybe they even share your posts to their own pages. That people are on social media anyways. And so if they want to be supportive, but they don't have quite the bandwidth to come to your taste test, that's a great way. Make sure they know about your newsletters. A great way to support is that they read the newsletter if you're sharing your program, and that they share that newsletter exists. And then they just talk about your program. And so if folks say, like, I want a little bit, you can just say, just talk about us, and just let people know that this is a value in our district or in our food service department, in our preschool.
Thank you, Abby. Yeah, so when we look at, just going back to the top a little bit, when we look at our management level folks, or our decision makers, those are the folks that are responsible for getting buy-in, for helping pitch ideas, and for advocating the program, not just within the community, but maybe even at the state level. We know we have so many food service directors that are really engaged in policy and advocacy. They are also responsible, or could be responsible, for managing financial resources or getting the money to come in to do this work. At the planner and recruiter level, these are the folks that are helping to recruit more team members and getting buy-in. So using that value statement and talking to other folks and saying, hey, come join this team. We're really doing some great work, and you're really good at XYZ, and we could use you on our team. They help with planning and setting goals with the team. So maybe planners and recruiters are the ones that are helping create that action plan. And then, as Abby talked, the hands-on or the boots on the ground folks, they're the ones who are maybe helping you manage your after-school cooking club or your garden club. They are helping with weeding, planting, harvesting in the school garden. Maybe they're helping at an event and holding spaces for students to do their activities. So there's all kinds of ways, but this is how I would break down the work. The two aspects that are really important is that you want to identify areas where you can leverage existing support to promote and celebrate and do the work, and also involve people without adding too much to their plate. And people are very good at saying what they can and can't do. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. So who's on the team typically? So here's an example of a whole school team. You want to make sure that diversity in the team includes some, talent, decision makers, implementers, and representation from all aspects of the school community. A few roles I would like to highlight as I mentioned, are the district level administrators, and that's because they're very key in implementing long-term goals. Like, for instance, you want to integrate farm to school curriculum in a whole grade level or all the grade levels. So you're going to need someone at the district level to do that. They are helpful in moving decision level roadblocks that keep farm to school fully integrated. And the idea is to build a high level of commitment. So this is, again, we're not alone. So you want to look at building capacity, and these are some areas that you could look at, but we mentioned some other folks like facilities and maybe a wellness, someone who's on your wellness team would be a good one. So I just want to say that this list isn't exhaustive. Okay. So what can all these people do? I think this is the one thing that people struggle with. So we're going to look at a spoke where I talk about each grouping of people. So school and district administrators, they provide support and leadership. They help with allocating resources and making sure that there's alignment with the project or the program with the district goals. Teachers and staff, they integrate farm to school concepts into the curriculum, connecting with local farms, possibly. I've had loads of teachers say, oh yeah, I went to this farmer's market and got to talking to this farmer, didn't know they were in our town. And they would be interested in working with our providing food for either taste tests or for our lunches. So I want to make that connection. So the teacher might connect that farmer with the food service director. Teachers can also support or lead farm to school initiatives. In fact, many programs that I've been involved with, and it's actually teachers that are doing a lot of work. But I want to say, teachers, you got a lot on your plate, and we want to make sure we're spreading the responsibility around. So farm to school coordinators and our newly established regional farm to school coordinators. I know that there's a few of you on the call. Your job is to support increased locally sourced foods, help implement farm to school initiatives like field trips, etc., and advocate for farm to school. So as we wrap up legislation session in the next couple of weeks, there's been a lot of work around supporting local food for schools incentive program and advocating for Connecticut Growing for Kids grant. So a lot of infrastructure that's at risk. This is a place for you to advocate and do some good work. Food service staff members, their job is sourcing and preparing local foods for school meals, taste tests. They're responsible for menu planning and promoting healthy eating in the cafeteria. Their job doesn't have to end just at the cafeteria. There's so many important other roles that a food service member could step into. For instance, I know some directors, they cater events at the school. So not just lunch, but catering events. And I know for those that have done it, that's actually in those arenas, they've have had success talking to parents, speaking to the superintendent, meeting legislators, really getting buy-in as to why farm to school is so important, why it's important to get locally grown Connecticut products onto the why am I blanking? Into the cafeteria, onto the lunch tray. Okay, students, they're learning about the food system. They can participate in school gardens. They can participate in taste testing, cooking, as well as advocating for farm to school. In fact, I know that a lot of students have participated in sharing their voice as to why these programs are important to them. And students will take any opportunity to share their feedback, so take advantage. Farmers, community partners. You can have a role in offering expertise. So as a farmer, you know about plant cycles, you know about when produce is available. You might know some other things that students are learning, like the nutrition cycle or composting. So there's other ways outside of being a vendor in which you can participate. Um, some farmers have offered resources to school, donating extra seedlings or seeds that they're not going to be using. So that's another opportunity. Um, I mentioned Connecticut Grow for Connecticut Kids grant. Those types of grant programs want to see partnerships with schools. And so this is another opportunity for farmers and community partners to collaborate with the school community. And parents and family members. Parents and family members is the largest group of untapped volunteers. I'm just going to put that out there. Parents are often looking for opportunities to participate with their kids in doing something after school. I found that schools that have integrated parents into the school garden programs, um, it's meaningful for both the parents and the students to be doing something together. Um, Not only are they growing together, but they may take that produce back home and try a new recipe and then share with other folks what they were able to do. And that cycle can continue because then a shared recipe can go to the food service director or the staff, and can get incorporated into events or into a menu or to taste tests. So there's so many ways in which all these folks can work together. Okay, so another opportunity for you to engage. Who is not currently on your team that should be part of your farm to school team? And again, I'm not looking for you to put create 7 people, but who do you think could help you advance your vision or your activities?
I'm going to put the question in the chat. Sherlene, could you go back to the previous slide with the wheel so that we can see?
Yes, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. There you go.
Perfect. Yeah. Who is not currently on your team? That should be. Feel free to come off mute as well if you just want to shout something out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, a high school culinary teacher. Great.
I have a story to tell about a high school culinary teacher.
Awesome. Parents and family members.
Yep.
Great. As Shannon says, the business administrators, so those people that are cutting the checks, don't forget about them. And the marketing
Mm-hmm.
director for the school or district. So that might be like the communications manager. Some districts have somebody that is in charge of all of the social media, and that's a great person to be on your team because they'll just promote you as part of their job.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
One other one is the grant writer in the district. That could be someone who can help you either write the grant or look for grant opportunities. Okay, so I see some stuff coming in. Keep it coming. I'm going to move on. Okay, so I talked about action planning. And as you saw, I said action planning is something you don't really jump right into, except if you are planning to expand your farm to school team. And yes, I believe in making sure you create a goal, right? So in this, here's an example where the goal is to expand the farm to school team, and we're creating SMART goals. So for those that are not familiar with SMART, I'm gonna just quickly say what that means. It's an acronym. S is for specific. This is where you're clearly defining what you want to accomplish. M is for measurable. It includes concrete criteria to make sure you're tracking your progress. A is for achievable. It ensures that goals have some priorities outlined based on your available resources. So essentially, A means achievable, means is it reasonable for you to accomplish what you set out to accomplish? R is relevance. is this aligned with your program's vision and values? Again, this is another reason why a vision statement is important, because sometimes you might see other folks doing things and you're like, hey, you might feel FOMO. I know I suffer from that. And I want to do it all. And really, the question is, well, does this align with what we set out to do as our vision? And T is for time bound. So this is where you set a deadline. I am definitely a person who likes and works better if I have a deadline. So this example I'm showing you is a real life example from Beeman Middle School, where they identified very early on that at the start of the school year, they wanted to do a back to school meeting with staff members. So during the week before school starts, when there's professional development going on, the idea was to get on the administrator's agenda and they could do a quick, 15-minute presentation with all the staff members present and basically ask people to join the team. And that was very helpful in getting a few recruits. They have something called food critics, and they wanted to make sure that student voice was incorporated. So they invited their food critics group to be part of the team. And that has been helpful. Last October, when they did their they kicked off Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids Week. They had food critics walking around interviewing farmers and interviewing members of the team, which then they used to promote Farm to School in throughout the school and the district. And then tabling at back to school night. Again, the goal was to invite parents. How do you get parents to join the Farm to School team? Whether it's, and you're giving them a specific job. So you're saying, hey, come join we want to launch an after school garden club or a cooking club. Are you interested in volunteering for that? So those are some examples of action planning around building your team. Okay, so as I mentioned, I told Abby I didn't feel comfortable talking about building teams without looking at leadership and team dynamics, because this is sort of the underlying current as to why teams fall apart. It isn't about the successful, tabling at back to school night. It isn't even the successful kickoff at a Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids Week event. It is this that I'm going to talk about next. Okay, so leadership and team dynamics. What does strong leadership look like? Well, as I mentioned, I know everyone has their lanes, everybody has very specific jobs, but when it comes to Farm to School, we have to think more functionally. And that means everybody has to know when to step up and when to step back, or when to execute on something. And it's helpful when you know what your role is, right? Well, let's look at leadership. Strong leadership is everything, whether it's coming from one person or it's something that's shared across the team. A good leader or leaders keep things moving. They build trust. And building trust is not a one-person thing. It is everybody is working together to build trust. They make space for others to shine. So if you find yourself, wanting to volunteer for everything, why don't you step back a minute and see if there's anybody else willing to volunteer? It helps the group stay focused on what matters. So within Farm to School, that might look like someone running, your meetings, or sharing that responsibility, making sure that we have a way of tracking next steps, so that we keep everybody accountable. And it is also, if you volunteer or you say you're going to do something, it means that you do it and then you follow up. Leadership doesn't have to be top down. Shared leadership works. It builds ownership, and honestly, it's what makes it last. We know that in school communities, people are coming in and out every year, sometimes in the middle of the year. So in order to keep things going, we want to make sure that we're staying accountable, and that we are very clear about what our role is and why we're doing what we're doing. Okay. What does shared leadership look like? That's great, Charlene, but honestly, what does shared leadership looks like in action? Well, leadership is distributed. That means that different people lead based on their strengths. As I mentioned to you, I had our at Beeman, our cafeteria manager. She's excellent at planning. She plans, she wonders why everybody else doesn't do the same thing. Well, that's not everybody's strength. Some people are more spontaneous. Some people don't prefer to have everything planned out for the next, 3 months. And that's fine. So her strength could be something that she helps with planning, but that doesn't mean she then does everything either. And it also means that she's not telling people what to do. And that goes up to my point about people are not assigned. People step up into items. And a lot of that is going to be based on the trust that people are building with one another. So if the cafeteria manager is great at planning, everybody's going to trust that she knows what she's talking about, um, and we'll collaborate with her to make sure that, yeah, the resources make sense, the timeline makes sense. Actually, we need to break down this goal into smaller steps. So it's more collaborative. Leadership rotates. So when you're looking at leading a meeting, as I mentioned, maybe that means that somebody could be note taker, somebody can facilitate, somebody else could be the timekeeper, right? Why do we do this? Because it also develops leadership skills. Not everybody likes leading a meeting or facilitating because that's not a strength that or a muscle that you've worked out. So this allows people to build some skills, trade responsibilities to avoid burnout. Let's face it, everybody in the school during the year, it's chaotic, it's stressful. So if we want to avoid burnout, we need to allow for people to step up and step back as needed. And it makes sure that everybody stays accountable. Okay. Mobilizing the farm to school team, another aspect that's really important. And this is sort of an art, right? It's important that we have people buy in. Buying in beats being voluntold. We want to connect people as to why they're here. And that's another reason why creating shared values and a shared value statement is super important, because then people know why they're there. They've had time to think about why they're there. Um, know your strengths. So when the call comes, I know how I can help. So again, this is another, instead of somebody calling on you, hey, you're really good at, I don't know, Canva, maybe that's something and that's something that you like. So if somebody's saying, hey, let's create a flyer, maybe that's a way for you to step in and do that. Maybe you're good at facilitating the meeting and that's your preferred thing to do. Maybe you could volunteer and say, you know what, I prefer following up with people and creating agendas and facilitating the meeting. I don't want to go to any events. I don't want to do anything else, but I want to just organize people. You'd be surprised. There might be somebody who's willing to do that. The right people at the right time. One thing that just squashes projects is when you have people who are not available, who don't have the skills put into something, right? And then they're set up for failure. So we want to make sure that we're recognizing when people have the space and the availability to do something and that it matches with their skill set. So again, right people, right time. And partnership is power. So I talked a lot about within the school, but there's so many opportunities to involve other people. Involving students, they're there with you, involve them. It's another way for them to build their skill set. They're super creative. They're not burdened by all the worries that us adults are. So, definitely leverage their creativity, leverage farmers and their expertise. Yeah, so this is a good way, some tips about mobilizing your farm to school team. I'm going to pause there. Are there any questions, Abby? Or does anyone have any questions?
Nothing in the chat, Sherlene, but time check. It is 4:50.
Yep. Okay. All right. So leadership dynamics, when they're ignored, I'll go through this very quickly. People go silent. Nobody speaks up. The same 1 to 2 people carry the work. And so burnout sets in. Tasks get dropped all the time because they either felt that they didn't have ownership or nobody cares about what they're doing. Tension builds up quietly. Small miscommunications go unaddressed. I have to tell you, with some of my teams, whenever they tell me something, I've always gone back to them and said, well, have you talked to this person about it or talked to the team about it? And oftentimes we strategize about that, but it helps. People start to feel replaceable, and again, another reason why shared values and shared value statement works, because they're part of it. They feel like there's some ownership to that. They don't feel replaceable, right? This is something that they're doing because it's meaningful to them. All right, so we're going to get into, I've laid a lot of foundation. We're going to get into team building strategies that have worked for the districts that I've worked with. So just to recap, sustainable farm to school programs require functional teams with representatives from all part of the school district. It evolves, farm to school programs evolve through 4 stages. And this is going to be based on a farm to school rubric that I will share with you in a second, that was built out by Vermont Feed. And I'll show you how to use it. So we'll look at each stage, because each stage needs different team building strategies and focus areas. Okay, so the farm to school rubric is an established way of tracking where you are in your farm to school journey. Basically, very high level, it's multiple pages. It has at the very top emerging, developing, deepening, and thriving. Those are the 4 stages of evolution. And down the first column says indicator, and it's by research, they have come up with certain indicators that tell you how farm to school eventually becomes part of the culture. Okay, and it's broken down by cafeteria, classroom, community, and a few others on sustainability and longevity. Okay, now I liked this picture because it demonstrates how within cafeteria, um, for each indicator, you could be all over the place. You could be developing in one area, deepening in another area, or emerging in a different indicator. So it's a good way for everybody to track where you are in your journey. The other thing I will say, this system it helps assess where you are. It informs your action planning process. So there's some good examples within each area of what you should be expecting your team to be doing. And it also can be used to identify when you're ready to go for farm to school grants, or when you might need technical assistance. Okay, so some strategies from the field. So again, this is also based on the rubric, but I pulled out some strategies that really worked with all the 8 districts. Granted, not many of them were in the emerging stage. A lot of them were in the developing or deepening stage, but we had a situation where we had a school district had leadership change in the middle of the year, and it brought back a lot of things to the emerging stage. So what are some things that are helpful? One, your whole goal in this stage is to spark interest and build foundations. And remember what I talked about. Foundations are creating your vision statements, assessing where you are with the rubric, and identifying who's going to be on your team, right? A starter team is going to be your champions. Find at least 1 to 2 people that could share that dream with you, right? one to two people who can help you develop your values and your value statement. Um, you want to start with a few quick wins. What do quick wins look like? It could be participating in this training. It could be doing a taste test, saying, hey, I wonder if my students have ever had, right now we're in the springtime and right now radishes are available. You know, has anyone experienced tasted different radishes? Maybe that could be a small win, doing a radish taste test for your students. Know where you are. And so again, highlighting the rubric, it's good to start off. That rubric you could find, we could probably share that link in the chat with you. But you basically sit with your team and start circling where you think you are on various indicators. Okay, success stories. As I mentioned, East Hampton's food service director, Kate Caselli, she became East Hampton's food service director after Jen Bove left mid-year. And Kate had to come in and figure out what she's going to do. And good thing she was part of our deep dive project. So Abby and I worked with her to figure out, okay, what are some actionable steps that she could do in the spring? And the thing that she was very, very clear about is she really wanted to know, you know, she wanted to prioritize her students' voices. She wanted to know what they liked, what they didn't like. She was very sensitive to that. And she wanted to start building relationships with people. And so as she started talking to folks, it just so happened that the high school culinary teacher said, hey, we're going on a field trip to Stone Acres Farm. Would you like to join? And she said, yes. And so she went, spoke to the farmers, and later we found out that she scheduled a field trip for her nutrition staff to go out and check out what was growing, to learn about the farm, and that really set her up to think about some other things she'd like to do. So in her action plan, she focused on, she wanted to provide her nutrition staff more professional development. She wanted to work with the student council to incorporate more student voice in the plant-based recipes that she was planning to do as taste tests throughout the year. So that's an example of what emerging looks like. Okay, before we move on, I wanted to take a quick break and ask, what has been your most successful quick win that built momentum for your program?
Yeah, to be honest, it's I came from a C++ institution place before I played.
Okay, thank you, Sally, for, she says, meeting Rosemary from Healthy Planning. Yes, Rosemary is a wealth of knowledge, and her online marketplace has been a game changer. All right, well, keep sharing. I'm running out of time, so I want to make sure that I get through this. Okay, so now we're moving into the developing stage. The goal within developing stage is you want to formalize your growing teams. So the first thing you want to look at is, okay, are you making any connections with local farmers or food hubs? So what are some ways to do that? I'm not sure if they're going on this year, and that would be a plug for Shannon. But definitely for this project, we had planned something called Chop Peel Dice events. And this was a way for districts to meet within specific regions of Connecticut to meet at a locations and talk to either the food hub as well as other farmers that sell in the area. So that's a good way to learn. I know that Put Local on Your Tray and the Farm to School Collaborative, they put on their first farm to school conference, and there were a farmers market there. So that was another way for people to meet farmers. And I know that there's plans to do that next year. So that's another way to make some farmer connections. And of course, speaking to your regional farm to school coordinator, and reaching out to Put Local on your tray, Shannon, who could help with that. Active recruitment. Again, earlier I showed an example of an action plan with some SMART goals of what you can do to actively recruit. You want to make sure that there's some intention behind that. You also want to just let people know what their role could be. So it's not just, hey, you want to join my team? You want to be able to explain what they could do and why, you know. And hopefully this presentation will help you figure some of that out. Apologies, my throat is itchy. Social media and communications channel. So we can't deny social media is a good way of connecting with the community, but I want you to keep in mind that that's not the only way. I've had teams work together where they're finding out what other team members are doing through social media. And rather, I would prefer if you guys figure out a way for you all to communicate internally first. So does that mean creating a Google Classroom and using Google Drive? Could it be something else that you use at the school that people are already familiar with? You want to set up where you will keep important team documents, like your minutes, presentations, feedback, data, event planning, and most importantly, photos. Collecting data and feedback. You want to start analyzing. So if you're food service, analyzing your menus. Do you know how many pounds or bushels of things that you need by month or season? Are you soliciting feedback from students and parents about the menus? And not just in the cafeteria, but are you asking for feedback at events? Like, did they like the food? At some point, pizza, it's easy, but there's other ways you can dress pizza up. Or maybe there's other local producers that you can invite, maybe even families. There's so many families that maybe are restaurant owners that would be willing to, engage with events at the school. Okay, so I'm going to share with you 3 stories. The first is from Coventry School District. Active recruitment. So they did a couple things. Coventry hired a farm to school coordinator who happens to be Abby. They also invited if a board of ed member to join the farm to school team. And they started connecting with farmers like Cobblestone Farm and the Click Willimantic Food Hub. So this is the one thing I wanted to demonstrate was active recruitment. They invited a board member to join their team. Another successful story, here you have Plainville School District. Ashley, she formed partnerships with different members of the school community to do events. She already had this existing relationship because she also caters. She's often hired to cater other events. Her biggest challenge was, how do I find local producers to purchase? I really want to purchase. And so working with our team, we connected her with the Northwest Food Hub. We had a business meeting. We sat down, we talked about her needs, and we talked through how she could order from the Food Hub. And that was a game changer. Later, Ashley was accepted into the Northeast Farm to School Institute, where then she continued to build a team and go for a year-long of technical assistance. So what does this help her do? Establish consistent purchasing of local food. Another success story, Vernon School District. So Vernon's food service director, Elizabeth Fisher, she analyzed her menu and purchasing patterns to develop a database of the top produce by needs and by volume and by season. And she did this at our behest. Shannon and I worked with her because we wanted to put her in a room with some farmers, and it was going to be super valuable for her to be able to talk to, well, what does she need? And that made all the difference. You know, she went on to apply for the Connecticut Farm to School Institute for this year, which she was accepted. And then she went on to invite one of the farmers at the table to join her farm to school team, and that's Susan Mitchell from Cloverly Farm. Okay, so for thriving, deepening and thriving, I combine these two because there's a lot going on. Strengthening and institutionalizing your stuff. So if something has gone well for your district, you know, the next thing is thinking about how do you make this happen year after year, you know? So does that mean you create a history? Do you create planning document? Like, what is it that you need to do to institutionalize? So part of institutionalizing and strengthening is regularly presenting to the Board of Ed, hiring dedicated personnel, integrating farm to school responsibilities into existing positions and policies, offering professional development from the nutrition staff to teachers, and there's all kinds of resources in the state for that. Integrating into existing community activities. So, you know, as I mentioned, maybe there's a yearly, like at my daughter's school here in Monroe, we do an international fest every year. And so that's an opportunity for people to purchase local, for them to use ingredients, you know, whatever that's available into their recipes. Formalizing your farmer and food hub partnerships. So for instance, I mentioned how Vernon was able to come up with her needs for the year. Well, how do we move into something that's more formalized with farmers and food hubs? And then ultimately, it'd be great if menus reflect your students' needs and preferences. So here's another a success story. Now, again, not everybody that I'm in this section is, you know, along the board deepening or thriving, but these are some things that they've done to move themselves in that direction. So for instance, Watertown, she hired a nutrition educator, but the first thing she came to us is saying, you know, my staff are just hesitant to cut butternut squash and watermelon and a lot of these hard, unusually shaped vegetables. And so I would love to incorporate that, but they don't know how to, you know, how to handle it or prepare it. And so we did a simple professional development. And actually that was the birth of a lot of professional development with nutrition staff that has happened over the last year or so, that I know Put Local on Your Tray can really talk to. So that's an example. New London School District. So Sam Wilson from New London, she is an infrastructure person. She wanted to make sure that she had the enhanced kitchen infrastructure for scratch cooking, and she adopted a brigades system, and she focused on that. And then as she was ready to launch, here comes the local food for incentive program, which really gave her, you know, augmented what she already planned to spend on local by a lot. So she went from spending a couple thousand to like spending, I think, something close to 9,000, which is about a 400% increase. So this just shows how infrastructure can really just amplify what you're doing. Okay, and this for deepening and thriving, we had Middletown's public schools. So Randall Mell, he's hired a farm to school coordinator, and recently as an executive chef, Keisha Diaz, who's done over the last year, she's worked really closely with Put Local on Your Tray in the recipe book and doing professional development for nutrition staff at various districts. So, all right. So the next couple of slides are based on integration are based on the survey you guys asked about for some things. And again, all of this is based on building the team. So when it comes to integration of local items, this is really great when you're in the developing to thriving stage, right? Because again, we want to build our team first before we get into things. And so a couple of ways you could do this is develop a way for you to get student and parent feedback. You know, how can you integrate that feedback into menus? Professional development for staff, staying flexible and think local. So what I mean by that is that, right, our seasons are changing. Farmers, if you talk to them in the beginning of the year for the spring, they may or may not be able to say they'll have certain things available because we are experiencing climate change. So the point is to work very closely with folks and stay flexible. They might have a bumper crop that they need to get rid of, and you might be able to take that. So, and I'm not going to get into that. Shannon, folks at Put Local on Your Tray could really talk to that. But it's just something as an individual, I'm encouraging you to stay flexible and think local. Join the Farm to School listserv, and then plan with the seasons. For farmers who are looking to collaborate, you don't have to be just a supplier. You can be a regular team member. For example, I mentioned how Vernon recruited Susan Mitchell from Cloverly to be part of her team. Now, when can you be involved in that? And I would say for teams that are developing to deepening in that stage, okay, farmers can effectively communicate with school food service directors by using a conversation guide that was put together by Put Local on Your Tray, or you can contact your regional farm to school coordinator. When I say understand what school needs, there's a lot of things that you need to understand, like invoicing, payment timelines, signing up to be a vendor, understanding the district's micro purchasing threshold and delivery needs. There's a lot to be covered there, but I just wanted to underscore that it's not just jumping in and talking to a school. You want to work with somebody, and Put Local on a Tray and the regional farm to school coordinators are great resources for that. Farmers can support classroom education by providing, you guys know about setting up a garden, or maybe what's a good crop, to plant in a school garden. There's all kinds of different ways, composting, greenhouse production, etc. Okay, now some folks talked about garden. I won't get too much into garden, but I wanted to offer examples of roles and duties. So again, focusing on the team part. School gardens, you are going to need somebody. A garden coordinator would be great. Their job could be overseeing the garden and schedule. Teachers could be focused on integrating curriculum. Students could be your regular care team. Community members could help with summer maintenance, donations, and expertise. The administration can manage resources and policies. So like, how do you allow people to come in after school, or how do you allow folks to access the garden space in the summertime? Food service folks are great to have because if you produce enough, maybe they can integrate it into a taste test or integrate it into the school salad bar if there's one. And then you don't want to forget your facilities folks. They're the ones that are really your partners in ground maintenance and storing your tools. They're just really great. So don't forget them. Sustaining your garden. So here's some things to think about. It requires more than good intentions. It requires deliberate teamwork, clear systems, and here are some things to think about. So year-round planning, create your seasonal calendar with jobs. Make your key documents accessible. So again, going back to internal systems for managing, where can somebody find a planting guide or some lesson plans? And then you want to keep celebrations. It helps keep the momentum and build community. So a couple ways of doing that, maybe in November after you've harvested and whatnot. Maybe it's doing a Thanksgiving meal with the community to celebrate what was grown in the garden and the members that participated made it happen. And then you want to do training. So don't assume that everybody knows how to weed or how to water properly. Training is really important. And of course, you can't do this without a budget. And one thing I want to highlight, and this is really key for administrators, is stipends. You know, can we pay teachers to do this as an after-school activity? Okay, so I know we're running over, Abby. I think we're almost done. But I just wanted to quickly show a couple of things. I won't go into too much, but this is just a quick summary. We see farm to school as, you know, all the things, field trips, gardens, and all of that. But really, farm to school culture is a whole host of other things that we don't really talk about. So I hope this training helps you think about those things. All right, so networking, the rest of the slides are going to be resources. So I pulled this map off of the Connecticut Farm to School Collaborative website, and this is just showing you schools that have gone through the Connecticut Farm to School Institute and the Northeast Farm to School Institute. And the reason why I'm showing you that is because these folks have built teams and have seen it all. Teams falling apart, teams growing back together. So, you know, if you're looking to connect with other folks to learn what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't, I would encourage you to reach out. Also, the School Garden Network, the SGSO, that's great for school garden support. There's a whole curriculum. There's so much going on there. So check them out. And I'm going to pass it off to Abby now.
Awesome. Thanks, Sherlene. We are a minute over, so we have a couple more slides, resources, and just a few more things. But if you do need to leave right this minute, I'm putting the poll into the chat so that you can complete that when you sign out. But if you're able to stay and get these last important slides, we appreciate your time. So there's a lot of support, and the previous slide that Sherlene showed is really kind of, you know, highlighting a few really great things. This slide is really looking at what's happening in Connecticut. So get ready. I'm going to drop a bunch of links while I'm talking. So the Put Local on Your Tray program, Shannon and I'm sure many of you know us through the grant program, but we have a whole team of colleagues. They are the regional farm to school coordinators. We've mentioned them a couple times. There's 5 of them on our team. And what they do is they provide technical assistance to food service directors in schools. So you can check out this link to learn more about them. Even if you're not a food service director, they're a great bunch of folks to know and reach out to. Put Local on Your Tray also has the farm to school directory, which shows all of the farms that are interested and willing in selling to schools, but also working with schools and collaborating with schools. This farm map is, you can look into it. You can zoom in on your part of the state. And then Sherlene also mentioned our listserv. So this is essentially like an email thread that you can email out into. And if you want to be a part of the listserv and you're not already in it, you can reach out to Shannon and she'll get you on there. It essentially works as a marketplace where what we've been seeing it work as is farmers will come and say, here's my list of produce, and or food service directors or educators will come in and say, here's things that I'm looking for. And it just connects us all together. If you are not already a part of the Connecticut Farm to School Collaborative, I really, really think you should be. This is where all of the news and updates, everything you need to know is going to land. And this is where hopefully we create a collaborative space for us to work in and support each other in the state on a grander level. So you can go to their website to sign up. And then I'm also going to drop in the Farm to School Institute, the Connecticut Farm to School Institute, which Sherlene talked about, provides year-long coaching to help dig deeper. You can check them out. And then next up, a lot of folks, when they were filling out our sign up, asked about financial opportunities. And so right now, it's so difficult to talk about financial opportunities because we're seeing so many things being canceled or that are up in the air. I'm going to run through all of these, and it's just kind of a list for you all to keep your eyes on. Some might not be accessible right now, but hopefully we can get funding back that has gone missing. So the local food for schools incentive programs, there's a federal funding source and a state funding source. This is really looking at food service departments in schools. If this applies to you and you need help spending your money, you can reach out to our team for forward contracting. Of course, we have the Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids Grant, Chef Ann Foundation. There's the Healthy Meals Incentives for Schools, which can sometimes provide funding or at least some marketing and promotion for your program. The USDA Farm to School Grant is the really big one that was canceled this year. I'm going to put it on the list and be an optimist and hope that it comes back, and just keep an eye on it. And then the Kendall Foundation also has pretty significantly huge grants and awards as well. And on the topic of financial opportunities, I think right now we all just need to be thinking about our creativity and how we can make money for our programs, within our communities. I'm not sure if Mike from Weston is still on the call, but I just had a site visit with him. He teaches at Weston High School, and one of the things that he does with his students is he has them sort the school's recyclables, and then they return those recyclables and they make money back. And he said they average about $2,000 a year just from that. And so, that's internal, and that's really teaching the students sustainability. There's a million ideas like that out there. And so keep reaching out to folks, come to the collaborative, because that's where we're going to keep trying to share these really amazing, amazing opportunities. And then just, for funding success, I won't go through all of this, but really take a look at what Sherlene said, because when you're applying to funding, you want to make sure that you have a really solid foundation. Build your partnerships. If you're a farmer, if you can get a school on board or vice versa, it just makes really strong proposals. And yeah, stay local and stay up to date. Come to the collaborative meetings for the most up-to-date information, and just make sure to use your team. All right, Sherlene, I'll let you wrap it up.
Yes, thank you all so much for, I don't know if anybody has dropped off, but we still have a good solid 14 people on the call, so I really appreciate your time. I know I packed in a lot, but I feel I've never seen a training like this, so I wanted to give you the most that I could. But yes, start where you are. Relationships precede implementation. Think in functions, match your activities with your stage. Assess and document, celebrate small wins, and connect with networks. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you all for having me. Just a reflection, where do you place yourself or your team on your farm to school journey? So something you can journal about. And of course, we appreciate your feedback. So I'll leave it here. If anyone wants to reach out and talk, I'm happy to share with you guys anytime. My work email, I'll put in the chat for you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. We'll hang out if anybody has questions. Otherwise, we appreciate you. Nice job.